All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to technically the second Living Lore Q&A that I'm doing on my world of Vanis. I am the Grinning Gamer, also known as Alice, and I'm here to answer any and all questions that you have about my very vast world. Here with me also is Aylin, my friend and player. She is one of the she is one of the characters in my world, the Moon Elf Monk that is playing in my Saturday campaigns. And yes, Failfire, hello, welcome to the stream. You are absolutely welcome to share some homebrew content with me. I always love seeing new homebrew. But we will launch right in to... Oh, good, it is working. Fabulous. Whatever y'all want to talk about. So here we go, my world of Vanis. I've just brought out the world map for you, hand-drawn by yours truly. You can see we have just a couple of continents available. Yes, links should be allowed if you'd like to post. We have the central continent of Albion here, Lavalon over in the south, Kettermorn down at the bottom of the map, the mysterious Tetra, Kinra, Evroth, and then of course the place where my campaign is currently taking place, Salika, up to the north. At any point, feel free to go ahead and ask questions. That is how we make things interesting here. I don't have much to talk about until I have questions, so I will go ahead and check out this link. Well, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about Lavalon because Miss Mysterious over here, the secretive moon elf, shares nothing. Oh, well, that's true. Interesting. So I'm assuming Failfire, that the thing that you sent me, this is a rogue subclass? It looks very interesting. I can't speak for balance off the top of my head because I need to give it a more detailed look. But it definitely looks interesting. Slev, nice to see you in here. For the landscape, that really depends on where you are. Are you talking about a physical landscape, or are you talking more about like a political landscape? There can be many meanings to that word. If you are talking about the current setting up in Salika, for physical landscape, I can go ahead and talk about that real quick. Good, yeah. Absolutely. So, let me see if I can talk and work at the same time, because no, because that would actually swap over my scene. I should have set this up earlier. I do have a lovely map of Salika, and here is what I will do. I am just going to throw an image in here as soon as I find it of the actual landscape, and then I can talk a little bit more about it. I do not have music currently playing. I had music for my introduction, but since it requires attribution on it, I didn't have time to fiddle with that for this scene. So, let's fix that just a little bit. Oh boy. There we go. Language. Well, I am attempting to probably put this on YouTube later, so I would appreciate if the profanity is kept minimal. Oh no. You can't hear her at all? They lied to me. I put in this widget specifically so that people could hear my Discord, and it's apparently not working. So that's unfortunate. Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, feel free to pop into text chat then, Aylin. Thanks for trying. Anyway, I promise I'll get this sorted out next time. Anyway. My favorite food, anything with chocolate. But back to Salika. So as you can see, Salika is itself actually quite a varied continent. It has some very interesting terrain to it. Being in the north, of course, it suffers from the cold during the winters. However, you'll notice that the majority of the land is actually taken up by one gigantic forest. This is called the Salika Wood. And the locals do consider it a little bit dangerous. The beasts of the land do tend to be a little bit ferocious, especially towards the High Elven natives. But it is a what one would consider a boreal jungle. Very, very thick canopy. In some regions, the trees are actually so thick that light does not reach the ground itself. And dotted throughout, you'll see those ruins there. Those are the ruins of the ancient Jaina civilization. And the Jaina, or the Beastkin, are the anthropomorphic race that is native to Salika. Other than that, of course, you have the mountains up in the north, the Girvadim Alps, which turn into the, I forget my names. The Termanish range, there we go. Those get quite a bit of snow. Currently, the players are situated, if you see just up there at the very tippy top of the map, there is a city by the name of Shinokal, the city of light and snow. It is built onto the side of Tongwatel Peak, which is the largest mountain in the region, nestled in between two other peaks, several hundred feet above ground level. And it has been there for hundreds of years, High Elven City. It is called the City of Light and Snow for a reason. It experiences almost constant cloud cover. There is actually a way, sort of. Let's see what I can do. Yeah, not really that well. I wish. Well, anyway, as I was saying, it experiences almost near constant cloud cover, lots and lots of snowfall, things like that. But then down near the southern parts of it, where you see it comes into the, let me readjust that, where it comes into the Ladlothian Sea. It does tend to be a little bit more temperate, still a little bit chilly. As for the forest itself, despite the harsh winters that the region experiences, it does manage to stay rather lush, partly because of its very thick canopy. Most snow doesn't make it all the way down to the ground floor. Oh. Have I accidentally changed my scene? No, never mind. Well, anyway, I am going to remove the map now so that you can see my beautiful face again. If you'd like any more in-depth details about particular parts of Salika, then by all means ask away. I can throw the map back up at any time if you need to be able to see it. Oh, no. The storm that's on the map is just flavor. The map maker that I had, very fantastic map maker, clearly, as you saw from the quality. I let them have a bit of free reign in the design, and so they put that down there, closer to the Isles of Rem. Exactly. Mm-hmm. All right. So that's it for the terrain of the region. But there is still plenty to talk about. I have a whole host of gods that are not the standard D&D pantheon. Politics. So that's actually a good one. The Salika itself, yeah, ooh boy indeed. So Maru knows, as Maru is one of my players, they have been dabbling in politics quite a lot in the Otherian Empire, which constitutes the majority of the landscape of Salika itself. The High Elven Empire, as it is, spans from west to east coast and excludes only the Terrador Peninsula, which is that Florida-looking tip down there. They are... it wasn't intentionally Florida. They are what I would call expansionist, colonial. They have a parliamentary system that still has a sovereign at its head, and they are known as the Sovereign, which I will keep talking as I pull up my notes. They are a little bit hostile. They tend to be probably the most racist, unfortunately, of all of the empires in the world. Let's see. They are the last place, the last nation that still practices active slavery. And you see that in the Jaina populace, the natives of the region, the indigenous peoples, who they perpetrated war against for several long centuries. In some instances, they even committed genocide against subsects of them, and then they enslaved them. Now, about 200 years ago, some progressives in Parliament finally pushed a law that outlawed what was called the Red Raids, where the elves would take raiding parties and armies against the now, what's it called? Nomadic tribes of the region, and take new slaves. So new slaves are not allowed. However, they do still practice captive breeding of the Jaina peoples, and although many laws have been put in place to ensure the safety and health of the slaves, they are still not freed, and it is a long, long push towards emancipation. Interestingly, one of the characters in my campaign has actually delved into some of the more detailed political aspects, so I do have some detailed lore on that. Currently, for example, the reigning sovereign is Surierna on Kaliman, whose name in Elvish means the most bright one who bears the winds of the old world. And yes, all Elvish names are like this in my world. Then you have in Parliament the people who hold the actual power, while the sovereign is mostly a figurehead. the House of Lords and the House of Commons, as far as the legislative branch goes. And in those, you have the varying ministers who also gather under them the lesser representatives of Parliament and such like. For the most part, they are at peace, sort of, with most nations. They have good relations with Kinra, good relations with the Ambalarnan Republic, which is down in Kettermorn. They have decent relations with Albion, if a little bit tense at times because of their superiority complex. They have terrible relations with Evroth. There's a constant war along their border down here between the Norn humans of Evroth and the High Elves of Salika. It hasn't blown up into full-blown war in a long time. It's mostly just skirmishes pushing back and forth territory along that little strait. They are, however, consistently hostile with the Moon Elves of Lavalon, who they have never had good relations with since, well, the dawn of recorded history. That bad blood runs deep, and does cause a little trouble for Maru here, as their character is a Moon Elf. So sometimes people are a little bit harsh towards her. They are hostile with the Isles of Rem, but practically every nation is. The Isles over here are ruled entirely by a set of 5 pirate kings, and as they perpetrate constant raids against the ships of Albion and Salika and Kinra, nobody really likes them. So that's about the political landscape of things. Again, open for particular questions if you would like. I'm just going to pop up so that I can get my light working. I'll be right back. I'm still keeping an eye out on the chat, though. Hopefully that improves the lighting situation just a tad. Yeah, so, sort of. The Pirate Lords are rulers, in a loose sense. They have territories, and they squabble back and forth over the Isles, trading territory back and forth as their ships go to war. But they don't have, for example, a code of law that is unanimous. It's really island to island. Now, in the heart of the Pirate Lord's territory, there will often be set rules, regulations, and laws, and they do require tribute from individuals that fly under their banner and receive their protection. However, trade itself in the Isles is a little bit loose. They maintain not an alliance, because they are constantly fighting, but an agreement, a code, that if any one of them comes under war by the other nations, they would rise into the other's defense, because they know that if one of them were to fall, then it would be like dominoes. That said, there are still instances where, exactly, strength by third numbers, and they do together possess a navy that is practically insurmountable. Together, the 5 of them could take on 2 major nations at once. Of course, because of the tenuous relations between Kinra, Albion, and Salika, a triple threat force has never been actually a problem for them. But were the 3 nations to band together, it is very possible that the Pirate Lords would fall. The difficulty is nobody really wants to do that, because it would be extremely costly, and they would have to split all of the land, and everybody just kind of wants it for themselves. Excuse me. Exactly. True. And they have on occasion um, been bought off, essentially, by other nations. They do provide a very lovely barrier where any of those nations to go to war with each other, they would have that region as like a buffer. There's still other ways, obviously. Kinra to Albion, um, the pirates become much less of a threat because their largest port city is down here on the southeastern side, which is, of course, why there is a fortress city on that little peninsula on Albion. Mm-hmm. There are plenty of mercenaries there. I wouldn't call them all mercenaries. Plenty of them are happy just to live lawless lives. There are some islands that are still uncharted, even. There are a ton of luxuries within the Isles that are very unique. On Salika? Um, yes, well, that's something that you've only slightly touched on, Maru, um, because you haven't really followed up on that too much, but they did overhear um, catch wind of some potential kind of alliance between Salika and Kinra, one of the Oraculum Octet, the 8 Grand Mages of the Etherean Empire, was having words with a diplomatic ambassador from King Ra. Been too busy with other things to catch up on that. Now, back to Salika, though, you asked where the colonists came from that are on that forest continent. So the colonists are High Elves. And by technicality, the High Elves are in fact native to Salika. According to lore, and please excuse me for clearing my throat so much, sometimes my voice gets a little hard. The High Elves of Salika are technically natives to the region. However, the region to which they are native is up here in the top left, the Quimalin Valley. It was here that their capital of Silmarnan was forged. And Silmarnan has been around since before recorded time. Currently, the year is 1243. It's existed long before that, to the point that the techniques with which some of its buildings were built, like the mithril spires, completely lost to time. It has been the capital of elves since before the elves were elves. So they, for a long time, inhabited that region, that valley, alone. As for the natives themselves, the Beastkin, it is said that they were brought into being some time ago by the hands of their own gods and goddesses, separate from the main pantheon itself, known as the Muses, the 4 muses of Sharesh, Minesh, Hasesh, and Razesh, wove them into being here in the forests. The reason why I call the High Elves colonists, or at least colonial in their mindset, is because, again, before the year 1243, before the year 0, rather, the High Elves waged war against the civilization of the Jaina, which at that time was very vast and thriving. You can see it in all of the ruins across the region. They had their own cities. They were actually a conglomeration of nations that banded together in times of difficulty under a single king. The High Elves gathered their power, especially in their magical expertise, and launched war against the Jaina for reasons unknown. They swept across the continent, taking out nation by nation, city by city, destroying them until there was nothing left of the once great Jaina civilization. Nowadays, the Jaina roam in nomadic bands that travel the continent from end to end, and stick to various regions, and are slightly in some parts enslaved by the High Elves. What was the rest of the world doing while they were at war? That is an excellent question. Unfortunately, I don't think that I can reveal too much about that, because, well, as you're aware, Maru, you've just come across Bestuno, the lost city buried underneath Salika, the ruins upon which it was built. That was perpetrated about 1,500 years ago, according to the protection that you witnessed. And as for knowledge that you would have, well, Opusond is aware that it was not the first to fall. It was simply hit the hardest, so to speak. The thing about it being the year 1243, Sandria Atum, is the reason why there is a year zero, is because practically all history prior to that seems to have been obliterated from record. It is not common knowledge. Now, oh, one moment. Nathrisa, hello. Welcome to the stream. I have discovered that unfortunately, apparently even though I did my best to set it up, my Twitch still cannot hear my Discord, but you're still welcome to tune in to listen, and you can also, if you go to the Twitch link that I posted, then you can see me streaming live. Sure. Yeah, you would probably want to mute one of them. We're currently in the year 1243 Slev. Oh, you could hear her? Yes. A lot can be lost. And I can say this, actually. So, Nathrisa, try speaking again. Huh. Oh, I wonder if it was picking up because it's kind of loud coming out of my headset here. I'll still see if I can fiddle with the settings later about it. Anyway, I can touch on what happened because Maru and Nathrisa Maru and Nathrisa have both actually discovered information about this. So there was, in the year zero, or slightly before, something called the Second Dragon's Blood War. They made the discovery that a lost god wiped from the records by the name of Felis, the Lord of Holy War. Yes, there be dragons. The Lord of Holy War betrayed the mother, his own mother and father, Surgaya and Evanes, and brought to war his own ill-begotten children in an attempt to overthrow the gods. The war ravaged the world, and I can't say too much because the players are still attempting to discover this, but it was this that changed practically everything. This is the reason why the year zero is the year zero. This is the reason that it is now 1243, and this is also the reason why plenty of records from before the Sandria Atem age are just lost. A battle axe of healing? That's wonderful. Slap your homie on your ass to heal them. Yes, that's absolutely a Nathrisa move. What was I gonna say? Oh yes, you can speculate all you want, Maru. The Mithril Orchard, the Starlight Path. I'm not giving you nothing until you roll well enough to find stuff. Besides, I need to draw out all those lovely little plot threads there. Oh yes, the Mithril Orchard. I really can't say too much, but I can give you the quote that I gave to Maru as soon as I find it in my damn pens. So give me just a moment on that. Maru, do you remember the Mithril Orchard? Where did I send you that information? Oh, here it is. So, let's see. I believe that this is the quote. So, the Mithril Orchard was referenced in a book as both a place and a thing. It was lost beyond paths that we have forgotten how to walk, once the pride and joy of all elves. Within its boundaries, it is said, the bark could speak, the leaves could whisper, and every touch, every taste, every sight, and every sound was knowledge in its purest form, and more beautiful than anything else in the world. The author stated, the sorrow of its loss is still felt in this world even though we never knew it ourselves, because it still knows us. Valinor. Something like that. It's, again, I really can't reveal anything because I do have players listening into this session. Yes, it's like Voldemort. You're gonna get to the Mithril Orchard and it's just gonna be a big evil wizard. Oh, well, no, because this video, Nathrisa, is going to get uploaded to YouTube anyway. So anything that I'm going to be putting up on YouTube, I'm not going to reveal any of the special secret lore in. So that, you know, that way you can't, you know, go on my channel and spoil things for yourself. There are other things that I could potentially talk about. It's difficult to play the back and forth game of this question and answer because people don't know what to ask about. The Starlight Path. You have, in fact, learned a lot about that. And there are several things that I can touch on. Lovely, lovely. So, the Starlight Path is referenced as a path between the stars. There are several poems and quotes that make reference to it, and all of them are very, very esoteric. Every bit of information that Maru's character, Aelin, has uncovered to date is difficult to thread together, and almost to the extent that it seems to be kind of just a story. Maybe. So here's one of the poems. To turn the key, one must first step towards the veil. To walk the mists and not be lost, one must watch the stars and follow the light, so that all corners of the world may be as near as a stone skipped upon a pond. For any that can navigate its maze, it is a place with 1,000 secrets, each with 1,000 more. There is plenty more than that. We have another little snippet in reference to it. Oh, those traitor stars, tempting, twinkling, delightful. all too happy to lead you astray just as easily as they would show you your door. How cruel, how cunning, how fitting, that to find the mysteries one must know them, but to know them one must first find them. Another quote. There is a path within the mist, where all the stars have gathered to watch. There is a sea beyond the mist, starless and vast. There are stories within the sea, one for every star in the sky. Another quote. There is a door of stone upon a mountain closed and cold. There is a door within an ocean beyond a place where light can reach. There is a door within a garden that only a dozen have walked before. There is a door upon the sky that only the widest wings have ever reached. There is a door within a wood, hidden where you cannot see. The doors are locked, the key is lost. Find ye the frayed edge of the world. Take the key, turn the lock, walk. And in addition to that, the last thing that I believe that Aelin was able to gather was a phrase that is often exchanged by people who are researching or attempting to find the Starlight Path, which is to seek is to find. And that is all. Bye, Maru. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for asking questions to move the conversation along, and I will be seeing you tomorrow for the very exciting session that I have planned. And yes, there's so much that I wish that I could say about these things, because I do have some fantastic plans for them, and they are going to be very exciting for my players to discover. But like I said, since I have players present, I can't really talk about them in detail. And anyway, a part of the fun of this series that I'm going to be doing is also the discovery of the people who are watching, the viewers like yourselves, the people that come onto my YouTube page. Exactly. Not just the players, but my subscribers as well. Secrets are going to be revealed first to, players get the first go. Friends get to listen into that. But for when my Patreon starts really kicking off as well, there are going to be secrets that are first revealed only to higher tier subscribers, and then they come out openly on my YouTube. Yes, and Slev, you are in my Discord, aren't you? Yes, you are. So Slev gets to listen in on the games, so he will be getting answers to those questions alongside the players. So that'll be fun. I know. She says so many plot threads are coming up, and yes, they are. We are rapidly trying to close up certain few plot threads before one of my players goes on vacation, so that he doesn't miss any major story beats. Yes, it is in fact common. Magic, whoo boy, there's a lot of that. So, to start out, one of the major things that you need to know about my world is that Magitech exists. It is real, it is new, it is being developed currently by a man by the name of Nicomedes, the inventor. He is based in the golden city of Albion. Yes, very steampunk, actually. And he's pushed the boundaries, the limitations of what Magitech can do. Oh yeah, with Mako diving so far into Magitech, it's going to be very interesting. I've gotten to write quite a lot about that. So something that you have to know is I do actually have, like, although standard magic, like spellcasting, works just like you would expect it, just like it always does in D&D. You spend your spell slots, let's go. the lore behind it is very, very different. Aether is a thing in my world. It is the explanation for why mages have limits to their abilities. It is an explanation for the various elemental affinities. And I actually have a... I'll get to the Magitech in just a second. I have a custom-made elemental affinity chart. There are a total of 24 elemental affinities that Aether can have in my world. And it is these elemental affinities that are woven instinctively by mages into their spells. This also, I can segue from that into Magitech, is the big problem behind Magitech at its current moment. So Nicomedes has stated this to the players. Different, yes, major and minor. Different elemental affinities have a way of canceling each other out or having volatile reactions. So it was difficult for Nicomedes to develop a Magitech engine, and yes, it is a Magitech engine. Just that draws in the Aether as is. But then you have the problem of if it's drawing in Aether just wildly with abandon, then it is going to be channeling through its conduits conflicting Aether, and this can cause violent reactions, destructive in closed Magitech systems. And so he is... Well, I'll get to the Octios in a bit. So his solution, of course, the only solution that he could come up with for the moment was to build a bigger Magitech engine, because there is a non-affinity Aether that does exist, and it's Aetheria Arcanum, which is completely unaspected. So, of course, you build a big engine that can only filter in Aetheria Arcanum, and then you don't have to worry about the problem of it butting up against each other. Yes, and it does make others. It's why the Griffin Mark II, his airship, is so massive, because it has to be big enough to support the engine that powers it and to actually lift it. Yeah, exactly. And actually, if you go, so I don't have art of the Griffin Mark II, but if you go and you look up the airship Shiva from Final Fantasy XII, that was the reference that I used. Good reference for the style. Anyway, yes, so you do know. So the current difficulty is all people have within them what are called Sephiroth. They have Cliff and Sephiroth. Cliff are these physical, spiritual, I don't want to call them glands, slots on your body that are invisible to the naked eye, but they're what draws in Aether from the world. But then inside, tied to the spirit of a person, they have what are called the Sephiroth. And the Sephiroth filter Aether through 6 basic aspects, and there's a 7th Sephiroth that gives a particular, that can swap back and forth between affinities. This re-aspects Aether that is passing through them, and this, because it is a non-physical thing, is impossible to research and replicate. But my players got their hands on a Book of Wondrous Answers. And one of the players is into Magitech and trying to build a relationship with Nicomedes. So his question that he used on the book was to garner every piece of information that he could about the Sephiroth. With this, it is opening up it is leaps and bounds, jumping ahead the development of Magitech, because now with this information, Nicomedes is going to be able to create drives that can not only draw in multiple aspects of the Aether, but also change them to exactly what is needed. So, I can jump back to the affinities, if you would like. I'll give you a second to reply because I know there's a delay, but if you want, I can do the affinities. I don't know Ba and Ka. All right, good, the affinities. So I do so love this. Let me go ahead and throw on another visual for you. Give me just a moment to work through this, because I've got to figure out where I put it, because I always lose this. But thanks to my Wednesday GM and my good friend, who I will call Vaughn, because I forget, Scott, there we go. Here we are. I do have an elemental affinity chart. And I will put that on now. So here we are. A little bit rough, mind you, because we did this in one sitting, several hours, of just us talking and like hashing this out. But as you can see, the elemental chart is a little bit different than you might be used to. Let me open it for myself so that I have it in larger scale. So ignore the one that's down over there on the right. The one down on the right is the sort of classic system that most people are used to, that mages were used to referencing in my world. The latest model here is the discovery of Nicomedes and his archmagus friend Azrael themselves. So if you look in the middle, down there at the black dot in the very center, that is the core. So you could consider the four colors surrounding that, the elemental planes, and that center there as the prime material. So of course in the center you have your standard earth, air, fire, and water. From there though, nothing is the same. While in classic models you would have in between those elements, for example, like water and air makes ice, and earth and fire make magma, those are reconstituted on here. Up at the very top of the chart you have lightning, which is its elemental aspect. However, it is best known as chaos. The chaos or energy. These are the two ways to reference the state of motion within Aether and all of its aspects. Down at the bottom, you have the very opposite of that. So instead of the positive and negative energies, you have energy and stasis. So stasis is represented by the element crystal, and it is also commonly associated with order, because things that are orderly don't move. So that brings us into the elemental aspects here of, if you look at the top, we have from between fire and energy, we have plasma. Between air and energy, we have, and I do lose track of this constantly. Gosh. Oh, thunder. There it is. Between water and energy, we have steam. And between earth and energy, we of course have magma. Now, in the opposite direction, earth and order or stasis, we have metal. Between fire and stasis, we have heat. Between air and stasis, we have vacuum. And between water and stasis, we have ice. A little bit more sensible, in my opinion, for the arrangement of those. Then it gets more complicated, Because if you look on the right and on the left, you have shadow and light. Now, this is the part that throws most people. My headset keeps turning off because there's no sound coming through it. Yes. And admittedly, also hello Flan, I see that you joined in. Once more, my Discord is not working, so do please tune into the actual stream itself, Flan. That way you can ask me questions. I haven't touched Mage of the Ascension. I actually got the basic idea from this from Final Fantasy XIV, admittedly, which is where I got the reversed associations of shadow and light. Most people would expect shadow to be destruction and light to be creation. That is not the case. Shadow, in this instance, is creation, and destruction is light, and I'll tell you exactly why. Replace instead the words destruction and creation with dissipation and conglomeration. Shadow gathers things together. Light splits them apart. So then, looking at this chart again, on the side of light, we have color between energy and light. Between air and light, we have gale. Between stasis and light, we have focus, which seems counterintuitive, but the people of this world don't have a name for lasers. So, you get the point. And then between earth and destruction, we have ash. Between creation and energy, we have flesh. And this is an interesting tidbit that I don't mind revealing to my players that are present, because, Nethries, I know that you won't metagame on this. These energetic associations do tend to have planar associations as well. In the instance of flesh, it is the abyss. I'll let you stew on that for a moment. Between earth and creation here, we have glass. Between stasis and creation, we have spirit. And between air and creation, we have sound. So that is all of the associations. And I'm currently in the process as well of creating a minigame enchantment system that is based off of these associations, wherein you draw runes, essentially, and you have to arrange them and build up a certain value. This is basically how somebody enchants something. They spend spell slots to draw runes, or they roll their rune scripting for it. Anyway, it's not done, so I won't get too far into it. I'll just get rid of that. Awesome. Thank you, Psycho, by the way, for your follow. I don't know if you're actually listening right now, but really appreciate it. Oh, awesome, you are here. Fabulous. So, back to Magitech then. There's so much to do with Magitech. Give me a specific question for Magitech. Okay. How is the energy used? Magitech tends to be it's kind of a mixture of enchantment and actual like physical engineering. So in a lot of instances, the most simple Magitech is literally just an enchantment that helps to run a mechanical thing. The big point where it gets like into the more complex is where you have, for example, the what is it? Like the airship, the airship Griffin. Like a Magitech engine, like the one that Nicomedes has designed, can channel aether into direct forms of energy. So this can be used to produce simple effects like heat, which in combination with certain crystals can produce light. It could be different things like you can simplify enchantments by just powering them off of aether engines, down to just like simple rune scriptings that define a set of rules. And so in this way you can form, for example, in the airship Griffin, there are control panels, and those control panels will react magically. There's a mechanical aspect to them and there's a magical aspect to them, where when you touch them, they produce the desired effect through magical feedback by consuming that aether and then drawing it back into the different aspects of the ship. Certain crystals, there have always been flight crystals within the world. The old designs for airships indicate that quite clearly, but these can be derived into an actual substance and put into mechanisms wherein, like, if you're familiar with the airship Shiva, I did somewhat draw on the concept of the glossaire rings. So these rings have a substance derived from flight crystals in them that when aether is channeled into them, depending on the amount, they produce a lifting effect, or even when pointed in a particular direction, a thrust, which is something that previous airships were critically lacking. Because before, without a method to direct them, they just produced upward lift and were reliant entirely on the winds, just like sailing. So that's one way. The ancient Jaina people were much more practiced in Magitech. For example, one of my players just discovered a runic rifle, which acts like a Gauss rifle. A prototype locked away in a vault that was never able to be mass-produced before the war destroyed that city. So there's stuff like that. It can channel, like, particular aspects of aether. Even with the current Magitech engine, you can, through conduits and crystals, kind of pump out a particular aether. So, like, lightning, for example, you could theoretically produce a lightning bolt, like cannon. That's entirely a theory. Hasn't been done in the world yet. Don't tell Mako, he'll try it. I'm kind of rambling on this. The most useful effects, I'd say, wrapping up this particular topic, if you look at the city of Salika, of the High Elves, although the High Elves focus more on the magical aspect than the technical aspect, the city of Shinokal, being so cold, as it is so high up in the mountains, one of the most recent magitechnical inventions that has put a lot of people's lives at ease is the expansion of steam tunnels. These mountains have geothermal vents in them, and so through a series of simple enchantments that are powered entirely off of magitechnical conduits from the Cynosure Arcanum, steam is channeled from underneath the mountains into practically every home. And this keeps it warm during the winter and even during the spring and fall when it's particularly cold up there. Additionally, there are crystals called allochron crystals that can be mined from the mountains near Shinokal, and really the whole of the Girvadim Alps. These, when exposed to heat, which is a very easy aspect to output with ether, like even if you're just using raw ether, you can use magitechnical techniques to produce heat. When exposed to heat, these crystals glow. So this has given the city its name, the City of Light and Snow, because light now floods the entire city during the nights. Now, Theresa says it is a nation built on blood, and she's very right. How does runic magic work? Depends on which runic magic you're asking about. I'm assuming you're talking about the runic style of enchantment, and not the style of runic magic that I haven't even mentioned at all. Of course, it's not easy. Nothing's ever easy for me. Let's start with the runic style of enchantment. So there are two methods of enchanting that an enchanter can use. One is rune scripting, and one is imbuement. Oftentimes, good enchanters will use both, because woven together, they make the process much easier and quicker. For rune scripting, there are a set of commonly known runes that can be woven together into essentially commands, put together with certain sigils and channels upon an object. When these are carved in and then imbued with a little bit of ether to start the process, they can continue to draw ether out of the surrounding air and produce, in effect, kind of like a program. The runes say this happens, so that happens, you know. The other method of enchanting is, of course, imbuement. The mage takes pure aether, channels their magic ability, and just infuses it into the object along with a will. Oftentimes, this is used as a method for doing enchantments that are like just a spell. Sending stones use both a rune and an imbuement in a new process that was derived to make them simple and cheap in my world. I think that probably about covers it. In theory, a person that doesn't have the ability to cast magic can enchant with rune scripting. They just have to have another method for imbuing that starting bit of ether. And those do exist. Now, God, I really wish that my voice was not this bad today. The other type of runic magic. Love this. So, the people of Avroth, down here, are... I really do need tea. I might get myself some on intermission in a little while. The people of Avroth are very, very averse to arcane magic. They look upon mages with a great deal of distrust most times. But magic is still omnipresent in the world, and oftentimes a necessity in certain circles. So they have developed a specialized form of magic called runic magic. The people that use this type of magic are called Weird Weavers. And rather than casting spells and expending spell slots, they invoke runes in particular combinations, simple runes, to produce effects. Most of the time, these effects, and you do have to understand the native people of Avroth, the Norn humans, are based on a Norse Enetic culture, and the orcs in the south are Proto-Germanic, And there's a deeply Celtic vibe that is woven through these lands. They are very warlike, and consider battle an honor, and often, even though they aren't like fully at war with each other, will do battle just as a form of sport. So plenty of runic magic, plenty of weird weaving is like temporary imbuements upon a weapon. They will trace runes onto their sword, for example, and it will light in flames. I will open up my weird weaving class, which is a homebrew that I have created that will be soon available through my Patreon. Let me get that. So here we go. Yes, they have an ability, for example, called Inscription. They can temporarily place runes onto objects of their choice, so as an action rather than weaving runes into the air, which is normally how they do it, they just trace. They can instead inscribe a rune onto an object or a weapon in order to gain a passive benefit. That can be increased, like they get Enduring Inscription at level 5, which allows it to last longer than 10 minutes. Stuff like that. And you do have like the basic runes, air, earth, fire, water, which are elemental. They have different forms: standard, passive, and advanced passive. And then you have other runes like embolden, lengthen, healing, drain. There are plenty more, but I don't have the notebook that they're in next to me, so I won't whip those out right now. No worries. Get your caffeine in you. Hopefully that was a good answer. So with Slev stepping away and me wrapping up that particular topic, I'm open to further questions. Anyone that would like to ask. And now, Theresa, if you're still around, you're perfectly welcome to ask questions, so long as they are not spoiler related. Difficult, I know. Right, of course. She says that she is stuck on some of the stuff that they've recently come across. So as long as it's not related to, you know, like questions that are clearly looming within the campaign, I may be able to answer like standard lore, so long as you're not taking notes right now. Good. Now, is that the High Elven Goddess of Magic or the Pantheon's Goddess of Magic? Right. So, well, here, let me ask it this. Mm-hmm. Let me ask it this way. One moment. So where's my no more? Here we are. Was it? Where is she? Adwin that you were asking about. Right. Okay. Adwin, Lady of the Tome. So Adwin is, in fact, one of the major gods of the pantheon. She is not specific to the High Elves, however, the High Elves hold her in very high regard as the goddess of magic, and she is the goddess of magic the world over. She is, of course, very respected in the pseudo magitocracy of the Aetherian Empire. So there is more to it than that. Because I do believe that you are aware that they also hold in regard kind of a semi-elven god, which is said to be the apprentice of Adwin herself. Yes. Anala's, you did, that's right, because you went on a little jaunt in your meditation into Adwin's plane. So let me pull this up. So, essentially, there was, I'll keep this vague, so that it doesn't spoil anything for you now, Theresa, but essentially there was kind of a cataclysmic event for the elves way back when, and they hold great respect for Adwin as essentially the salvation of their people, but that's in tandem with Inalazim, who gave up their position upon the mortal plane to become Adwin's eternal apprentice, their helper, and in so doing saved the elves. Now, you're not sure how that came about, what the circumstances were, because you haven't done that research yet, but these right, you did. Yes, you so again, I know that you can't hear Nathrisa, but she did come across lore that stated that it is Inalazim who grants elves a portion of their former existence as Eladrin. So the Eladrin are immortal beings. They cannot die through aging. And once the elves were Eladrin, this is known. Because the elves keep this fact as common knowledge. It may not be common knowledge on all continents, but anywhere that elves make up a majority of the population. So, of course, at some point, the Eladrin that were upon the face of Vanis became mortal. How that happened is unclear. But through Inalazim's actions, through his apprenticeship to Adwin, his pact of servitude, he was able to essentially garner secrets from her, a method, a ritual by which he was able to grant elves a portion of their former lives, so that rather than being diminished to a mere mortal lifespan, they still maintained their 700, 800 year lifespans. Of course, this is nothing in comparison to immortality, but it is better than nothing. Yeah, you must have, because gotten them mixed. Because do recall also with Adwin, you did find information that's story, which was there's a story that says Did I send you the whole thing? Let me... Oh, you know what? I do remember where I actually put those notes, so I can pull that up. Let's see, because I wrote that in... My notes are scattered all over the place, people. I have some, like, important lore information that's just tucked in a single paragraph in one of my modules. Anyway. Oh, wait. Nope. Indeed. Let's see, go all the way down to... Here we are. So I'll just launch into this lovely little story about the... essentially, not the birth of Adwin, but the turning of Adwin into the goddess of magic. Because originally, she was not a god. She was not born a god. So, before the advent of the Arcana, when Adwin was not yet a god, the young dragoness sought only knowledge, that of the past and of the future. But with no books to record the history of the world, she languished in ignorance, only able to glean what little she could from poor retellings of the drakes and dragons. But the clever Adwin knew that Sir Gaia, Lady of Fate, could look through the web of life, both into the future and the past. If only she could borrow but a fragment of this power, she could gain all the knowledge that she sought. But the mother and father were fiercely protective of their power, and with her knowledge of the future, Sir Gaia was not easy to trick. So Adwin set to scheming, putting her clever mind to work on the most complicated plan that had ever been forged. For 25 years, she worked in silence, forging alliances, gaining favors, concocting schemes, learning games, until through sheer force of wit and spirit she had forged 1,000 plans and knew every possible outcome of her confrontation with Sir Gaia. Everything prepared and planned to perfection. With confidence, she strode into the halls of the mother and demanded to see her, but when the Lady of Fate hesitantly came to meet her, Adwin did not fight her. Instead, she made but one request: a single feather from Sir Gaia's magnificent mulberry wings. At first, the Lady of Fate refused, but with pride, Adwin stated that the feather was already hers. In confidence, she laid bare the truth, that she had planned every eventuality, that were she to simply take the feather she wanted, her victory in whatever conflict ensued was ensured. Looking into the web of life, the goddess saw this to be true, every thread ending in Adwin's victory, no matter the actions that she took. Impressed and horrified, she congratulated Adwin on her wit and intelligence, and plucked a single feather from her wing, granting it to the young dragoness. But, she demanded, in return, Adwin was never to show her face within her halls again, or her ruin and death would be assured. To this, Adwin agreed, and left happily, flying away to her tower. From the feather, she crafted a single magnificent quill, and with it began to write. And to her joy, all the stories and secrets of the world came flowing from her claws into book after book after book, which she hoarded away in her collection of all the knowledge of the world. And this was how Adwin came to be the goddess of knowledge and magic. Eventually, she was also responsible for the forging of the runes when the Arcanum was dictated into a more narrow set, where thought did not create reality. It was impossible for people to use spells because they didn't have knowledge of spells. Prior to this, they just made magic by force of will. She scrawled out incantations and the first runic chains, although technically it was Razesh who was responsible for the forging of the first actual runes. Adwin refined them and made all of the basic magic that is known today. And she is the keeper of it, and its rules. She defined those as well. So now Theresa just asked, since magic existed once as a force of will, if how that worked and if there were drawbacks to that. Yes. So it isn't necessarily as though wherever anybody walked, their thoughts just became reality. People invoked their willpower and forced it upon the world around them to alter it. This was how they cast magic. There were no defined spells. A person with particularly strong spirit would be able to invoke more powerful magic. And this is how the gods held their supremacy, because their spirits were so vast and their willpower so large that they could simply kind of destroy at will anything around them on a much more vast scale than any other form of life. The drawbacks to this, and this is okay to know, but keep in mind that your character, now Theresa, definitely would not know this. The drawbacks to that were impulsiveness. On occasion, thought would just create reality. Stepping through an errant part of the Aether, since there was no barrier between worlds at that time, certain areas, strong mists would just take your thoughts and then turn them into reality around you. Nightmares, dreams, anything. In addition to that, there is the impulsive nature of mortals, often tangled up with emotion. You have impulse, and so before thought can put a stop on things, someone would exert a force of will and do something that was not meant to happen. And oftentimes this would be more powerful than normal because emotion flowed behind it, and emotion was energy. And so this would come about with, like, for example, somebody had wronged you, and in a fit of anger, you wished them ill, wished that they would be smitten, and just lightning would form from the sky and assail them. And if they were lucky, they could react to that. But if not, you've just murdered somebody by being angry. And yes, the world was more malleable. It was... well, they deserved it. Sure. If that's what you think. The world was, in fact, quite malleable. Yes, you probably would have known, Theresa. Now, the gods, of course, used this very much to their advantage. And divine power still remains much more malleable than etheric power, of course, within the world. But they shaped the world around them with wild abandon, as did the people of the time. For example, the Golden City of Albion, the capital at the center of the central continent, was originally shaped by these concepts. It was ardent lord of civilization that guided the people and taught them, like, the structure to invoke to bring order to civilization. And so, according to lore, the Golden City is the bastion of civilization, not just because it is the largest city in the world, but because it was also the first. And it was the thoughts of the people, the first children of Vanis, the Dragonborn, the dragons, and the great drakes, that forged this city, its foundation. There's a lot more that I could say, but I won't, because it's kind of secret. Like, there's the Sephiroth Gehenna. Well, I can tell you that the Sephiroth Gehenna, they split. They are the Grand Gates that split Aether from the source into its base forms, Earth, Air, Fire, Water, and Etheria Arcanum. They didn't always exist, and that's as much as I'll say. So, next question. And I probably won't be going for too much longer. I was hoping that more people would tune in. I put posts up on some subreddits on world building, but I guess that the mods nuked them, which is kind of stupid, in my opinion. But, oh well. Yeah, because they are not showing up at all. Oh, well, that's an excellent question. In reality, you wouldn't. So, sorry, let me. I forget only I can hear her. Now, Theresa asked, how many gods are there technically? She made reference to there are smaller gods, like Verdant and Sheehan, that are not like necessarily a part of the main pantheon. Well, the answer is I can't tell you, totally, because some of the gods, specifically, like for example, Felis, you've discovered that one. There's some that the knowledge has been erased. There's some that the knowledge has been forgotten. But to give you an idea, let me pull up my notes here. Okay. So her other question also is what constitutes a god? Yes, some gods are just kind of floating around happy to not be bothered. So let me answer your question with just a vague tidbit of information. I have notes on 26 different gods, excluding the muses. Take that how you will. As for what constitutes a god, there is a distinct difference between a mortal form of life and a divine form of life. Yeah, you should be nervous. Divine forms of life do not subside or exist in like the same way that we do. They are... It's difficult to explain because it's also difficult to comprehend. They exist outside... It is a creature that exists outside the rules of nature and often has power over them in some aspect or another. A divine form of life will have what's known as a... what are they called? God damn it. A domain. Sometimes multiple, sometimes overlapping with other divine forms of life. These domains, they have power over in a way that is as natural as your breathing. It takes them very little to make minor changes to these aspects of reality. It takes them no effort to sense most things among these aspects of reality. They can invoke change within them from afar. Many forms of divine life are able to be either omnipresent or multi-present. They can be in multiple places at a time. They do not have to be present in a location in order to be aware of it. They surpass the boundaries of magic and are not dependent on aether to invoke their powers, although they can often utilize it. There is a different form of energy that sustains them. That is as much as I will get into necessarily, because we unfortunately, because our campaign butts up on the divine and running into knowledge of them, I can't say too much because it ruins the surprise. Not necessarily because it will change anything that you do, but a big aspect of my world is exploration. So I don't want to ruin those tidbits that you can uncover. I can talk about Verdant and Sheehan, though, if you would like. Let's see. Some mortals have obtained godhood in your backstory, but could someone today in your world obtain godhood? Interesting question. Theoretically, yes. It is nowhere near as easy as it used to be. It takes an immense amount of power in order to ascend past a mortal state of being, to alter yourself so completely that you can become divine. Not only that, but it's dangerous. The possibility of killing yourself is very, very clear. Not necessarily. So, not all of them. Some of them. In a time long past. Like, for example, you have Adwin, the goddess of magic, who obviously at one point was not a god. And she, of course, obtained godhood. Now, the definitions of this are unclear, or like the boundary of how she did so was unclear. Further, do keep in mind that the dragons are considered children of gods, and they themselves are quite powerful indeed. And back in the day, before the rules of magic existed, they had very, very strong forces of will and could invoke great change in the world. They were practically demigods already. With certain changes in the world, they became more mortal. Now, talking about obtaining godhood, and the gods themselves, funny thing, where this all started, the story of my world, the world itself. The reason why the Pantheon is draconic, and this may be a little bit funny, is because I used to play Flight Rising constantly. Yes, that is where this story begins. So I had a brood of dragons that were all very colorful and very pretty. And on your Flight Rising page, you can put in like lore for your dragons. You can make a big page banner, something like, oh, you know, I have a big expansive nest of dragons. Let me write some lore for it. And instead of doing anything normal, like everyone else on Flight Rising, I wrote lore like Greek Odysseys. Like, it was just, it sounded like the stories of the gods from ancient Greek culture. So that's where it all started. You have the first god in the pantheon, one that people don't typically worship. He is, sorry, scroll back up, Fortis the world dragon, and it is said that his body itself comprises the surface of Vanis, where when he flew through the void, eventually he grew tired and he curled in upon himself and he formed the world. And from his flesh and blood were born the mother and the father, Surgaya and Avanes, the first two gods. From their scales, it is kind of a descendancy almost. Scales ripped from Surgaya became Ardens, Zur, and Arum, the two brothers and the sister. And from the blood of Evanes, you had Surgaya rise. You even have another very early god, and one that isn't very often talked about, is Seraph. She's a minor goddess. She's the goddess of, I guess it would be change. She broke from a cliff on the newly formed King Ra. Her body was pure white, but she flew around the world so fast that it gave it its spin, and thus created day and night and sunrise, and so she was granted the colors of the sunrise by Surgaya and Evanes. All kinds of stuff like that. There's Crest. Crest fell from the stars. He wasn't even of this world. The list goes on. Malazan, Book of the Fallen. I'll have to look that up. Let me put that in a tab so that I don't forget about it. I think that would be very interesting. If it's anything like what I was just describing, then yes, I would love it. You had what? Oh. Oops. Yeah. She jokingly was like, I was gonna say aliens confirmed, but then we had already met Arum. Yes, they did meet an extraplanar entity from Mechanus, a temporary player in my campaign. That was a trip. He, without any preparation whatsoever, whisked them back to Mechanus to fast travel them back to where they needed to go. The fact that he has the same name as the goddess Autumn is complete coincidence, I promise. Ooh, I do love complicated magic systems. Yes, there are other worlds. Oh boy, are there other worlds. So there is of course a planescape. There are outer planes. Not all of them are the like traditional forms. For example, you don't have Mount Celestia, you have Eidolon, which is rough equivalent. The Abyss is somewhat different in my world. It still exists. The Nine Hells are still there. And you still have the Feywild and the Shadowfell, but different lore for their creation. The Astral Sea is still there. But then you have places like Arrakis, the Eternal Prison, which is the domain of Evanes. And you have well, I can't say too much, but think all you want. I'm not saying anything about that yet, not till my players discover more. What was I gonna say? Right. You do have Mechanus, and Mechanus still exists, but its lore is very, very different. Let me actually talk about this, because I really don't think this is going to come up in this campaign, now that Aurum is guaranteed no longer to be a part of it. So he had a lot of information on the planes and how they function. And I don't think that the players are ever going to return to Mechanus or interact with it at all, so it seems a terrible shame that this lore goes to waste. No, not on that page. I guess that would be in Aurum's section here. Let me just... No, actually, it'll be easier this way. So, Mechanus, the plane of order. There's some stuff about it that I can't say. Things that players definitely that may still come up, but possibly the most interesting part about Mechanus is this: there is only a single instance of it across all probabilities. That line is important. Vanis is a world of multitudes. Every decision, every probability creates a new, well, every major one at least, ones that create ripples and that change the paths of time. They essentially create new Vanises, new realities, these new bubbles. So you have a single source, the outpouring of magic, and surrounding it all you have multitudes of possibilities, realities, dimensions of Vanis. But only one Mechanus. Mechanus rides along all of these realities, and by its structure, by its nature, balances them. It rearranges all of the outer planes, because the outer planes are essentially they're Vanis's way of balancing aether. It is channeled through, and you have the different energies of chaos, of order, of the different elements and stuff, and it rearranges them to keep them in balance so that the bleed of aether from one to the other does not influence that plane. Because back before Mechanus, there were more planes, or there were less, depending on the time, because they would be destroyed, they would combine, they would split, or they would change to similar instances because of this bleed of energy. And so it will literally, in kind of like this multi-dimensional way, ride through Vanis and attach itself to the planes and harmlessly rearrange them. And it waffles back and forth across the realities, deciding which ones are defunct and which ones need to be balanced. It makes sure that each of these instances are not falling out of line. The reason why Aurum jumped into my campaign is specifically because they detected an imbalance in the flow of energy. So, according to the laws of Mechanus, the laws of the universe which they have written, energy is constant from source to end. There are fluctuations in it, of course. Sometimes it will be stored, sometimes it will take longer to reach its final destination, but essentially between the source and the end, the amount of energy that goes to and from is constant. It will always equal the same. And they detected in this instance, this iteration, they call it, an imbalance. Aurum was sent to determine the nature of it and whether or not Mechanus needed to intervene directly, which they can occasionally do. And then you get very angry people at a bunch of Modrons and Pact-bound marching through their homes. But so be it if it's for the sake of preservation of reality. So there you go, Nethrisa. Forget you heard any of that. Digest away. Nethrisa says that she has the memory span of a goldfish. Good. Oh, of course it is. Anyway. You have a goldfish for a brain? Well, that sounds painful. She just nodded as well. We're all goldfish. Ooh, excuse me, goldfish brains here. Well, anyway, I think, Slev, is that the end of your questions? It seems like you do have a lot to digest now. Excellent. Well, I am still open for any more questions. I think that I'll probably wrap up the stream here in about 13 minutes, just as it hits 7 o'clock. That was my original plan. So if there's anything else to ask it now. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thanks for joining in, Nathrisa. I did definitely appreciate you and Aelin popping in at different times because it helped move things along. Yeah. No, sorry, can't answer them. Yeah, I will see you tomorrow, Nathrisa. Prepare yourself. Bye-bye. Well, I'm not seeing any further questions, so I may just go ahead and wrap up this stream a little bit early so that I can give this mic back to Chi so that he can get onto his stream. But in any case, I appreciate those of you that did tune in tonight to watch me. A little bit smaller than last time, but I don't mind because I still had plenty to talk about. Next time, well, we'll see what happens. It's all up to you guys to decide what I talk about. Love you guys. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again hopefully next week.